My name is Tori Morgan. I'm 38 and I've been a court reporter for 14 years. 3 weeks ago, at my mother's 75th birthday lunch in a memory care wing in Central Virginia, my mother looked at me with eyes the color of clean rainwater and asked, "I'm sorry, dear. Who are you?" My older sister, Whitney, was sitting right across from us. She laughed, patted Mom's shoulder, and said loud enough for the nurse and 3 other residents to hear, "Don't worry, Mom. She's nobody important." I didn't argue. I kissed my mother's forehead, asked my 10-year-old daughter to grab the gift bag, and drove 47 minutes home. By Monday morning, my sister was about to lose every piece of paper that gave her power over our mother. Before I take you back to that birthday lunch, please take a moment to like and subscribe. In the comments, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Now, let me take you back to a Saturday in March, the day my mother turned 75. The drive up to Maple Ridge took 47 minutes if you didn't hit the bridge construction. I left Charlottesville at 9:43 with Maya buckled into the front seat and a small wrapped box on my lap, rose-tinted oil, Mom's favorite for the last 40 years. Maya was 10 and wore her hair the way my mother used to wear hers, French braided and a little crooked at the back where Mark had given up. "Mom," Maya said, somewhere past the second exit last time. Did Grandma know it was me? I kept my eyes on the road. She knew the warm-off you, baby. That's not the same as knowing. It isn't. The hill country opened up around mile 32. Pasture, low fences, 3 black and white cows who never seemed to move from one Saturday to the next. My mother, Vivian Morgan, had taught piano in a town 20 south of here for 41 years. She used to say Saturdays were for gardens and birthdays and not much else. She had been a careful woman. She had been the kind of mother who wrote thank you notes by hand and folded them into thirds. I should say what I do for a living because it matters later. I'm a court reporter. I'd spent 14 years writing down what other people said in the worst moments of their lives. Divorces, custody hearings, civil suits, the occasional guardianship. The Friday before Mom's birthday, I'd taken testimony in a guardianship case so bad I'd sat in my car after work for 9 minutes before turning the ignition. I didn't connect it to anything yet. That was the thing. The GPS said in 2.3 miles in the same flat woman's voice it always used. I reached into the glove box for my mother's old gardening glove. I kept it there, the right one, with the beeswax still soaked into the leather, and held it for half a second the way some people touch a dashboard saint. Maya watched me without watching me. She had been doing that more lately. Last time, I said mostly to myself. The front desk said something funny. "What?" They said, "Oh, you're back." Like they were surprised. Maya didn't answer. She was already counting cows. Whitney was already at Maple Ridge when we pulled in. She had set up the corner table by the bay window, hung a banner that said 75 and radiant in copper foil, and arranged 12 party favors in identical craft paper bags tied with twine. She did this for everything. Whitney was a real estate agent. Staging was her language. "Oh, you made it." She kissed the air near my cheek. I wasn't sure with traffic. There wasn't any. She turned to one of the aides, a young woman whose name tag said Rosalind, and laid a hand lightly on her arm. "Tori comes once a month or so. She works downstate. We're so glad when she can swing it." I said nothing. I'd driven up the second Saturday of every month for 16 months and been turned away at the front desk for 14 of them. Maya reached up and slid her hand into mine. Mom was already at the table. Her hair was damp at the temples. Somebody had bathed her recently. And she was wearing the cardigan Whitney had given her for Christmas, the one that pivotaled at Thielbo's. She looked smaller than I remembered. Smaller is the wrong word. She looked further away. "Mama," I said, and sat down beside her. She turned. She smiled the smile she had always given strangers in the grocery store. Polite, distant, held at the door. Marlene Pace, the floor RN, was passing behind us with a cup of crushed ice. She paused at our table for what should have been half a second and was instead almost 2. "Vivian's having a good day today," she said, looking not at Whitney but at me. "Real good day." "Thank you, Marlene," Whitney said brightly before I could answer. Marlene moved on. "Don't mind her," Whitney said under her breath. "Nurses up here, they get attached." She made the word sound like a small embarrassment. I watched Marlene cross the dining room. She did not look attached. She looked like a woman with a notebook in her pocket she hadn't been asked to open. Maya squeezed my hand once hard. I squeezed back. Cake at 12:15. Whitney announced to the room to no one in particular and lit the first candle. I sat next to Mom and looked at her for a long time the way you look at a photograph that's been left in the sun. She had lost weight. Real weight. The kind that takes months. The cardigan slid off one shoulder when she lifted her hand. Her wedding ring, which she had not taken off in 43 years, was sitting halfway down her finger. At Christmas, she had been 142 lb. I knew because she had let Maya weigh her on the bathroom scale, laughing, and Nosh was something less. I unwrapped the small box and slid it toward her. Rose oil, Mama. The one you like. Whitney reached across me before Mom could touch it. Oh, sweetie, she's allergic to rose now. Skin reaction last spring. Didn't I tell you? Mom had not been allergic to rose in 75 years. You didn't, I said. Whitney smiled. Well, now you know, I let her take it. I had brought a manila folder out of habit. Court reporters carry folders the way other people carry tote bags. And inside it, in the sleeve I kept old visit notes, was a piece of paper I had forgotten about, folded into quarters. Mom had pressed it into my hand 4 months ago in one of her bright moments. And Maya had been crying for the bathroom, and I had pocketed the note and not opened it. It would sit there for 7 more days before I read it. The note was already mine when she asked who I was. Where's Helen? I asked. Whitney was lighting the second candle. Helen VRY, I said, Mom's friend, 40 years. Oh, Whitney didn't look up. Helen moved, didn't she? I think to her sisters, somewhere up by the lake. Helen lived 4 miles from Mom and had since 1983. Cake, Whitney sang. Mrs. Pearson in the wheelchair at the next table said quietly to the aide pushing her, I keep telling that woman that Helen's been calling the front desk for 3 weeks. The aide hushed her. I heard it. I logged it. I did not say anything yet. Maya looked at me. I looked at Maya. We did not speak. I excused myself between the cake and the candles and walked down the corridor toward the restroom. Marlene was at the medication cart refilling something. I slowed. Marlene, I said, is Helen still calling? Marlene didn't look up. She closed the cap on a small white bottle. She took half a second longer than she needed to put it back in the tray. I knew that half second. I had transcribed it in 12 different witnesses. You'd want to ask your sister about that, sweetheart. I'm asking you. She looked at me then. Her face was the face-off a woman who had been waiting to be asked something specific and had not been able to volunteer it. You have a good day with your mother, Torre. She walked away. I stood in the hallway with my hand flat against the wall. The wall was painted the color of weak tea, the way every memory care wing in America is painted. There was a framed print of Waterleys hung at exactly 53, so the residents could see it at eye level. I noticed all of this the way you notice a courtroom on a long day by the small permanent things. What I had just learned was small and permanent. Helen had been calling. Helen had not stopped trying. Whitney had told me a year ago that Helen had drifted away, that she couldn't handle Mom's decline. Whitney had told Helen. I now understood something else. I went back to the table. Whitney was running the back of her hand down my mother's cheek with a tenderness that from across the room would have made a stranger cry. The kind of stage tenderness Whitney had learned at the same place she had learned to hang banners. She was singing under her breath. Happy birthday, Mama. Happy 75th. And her fingernails clicked through Mom's hair on each downstroke, even metered like a metronome. I sat down. I smiled at my mother. I started counting Whitney's strokes through my mother's hair. I had been counting things wrong for 16 months. In court, when a witness pauses half a second too long before answering, you mark it. I marked Marlene. I marked Mrs. Pearson. I marked the hand on the cheek. I did not say a word. The cake came out at 12:15. Whitney had pre-cut it. Each square the same size, each on a paper plate, each plate with a plastic fork balanced on the rim. She lit the candle in the shape of a 7 and the candle in the shape of a 5. And she sang the first line of Happy Birthday in a clear, pleasant voice. And the residents at the next 2 tables joined in a half-beat behind. Mom mouthed the words but did not sing. She had taught piano. She knew where Thebit was. She had simply gone somewhere quieter. Maya leaned against my arm. Whitney finished the verse and looked at Mom expectantly. "Make a wish, Mama." Mom didn't blow. She tilted her head and looked at me. At me, eyes clear as rinse water. The way she used to look at me across a kitchen table 40 years ago when she was about to ask me a real question and said very softly, "I'm sorry, dear, who are you?" I felt Maya stop, breathing against my arm. I opened my mouth. Whitney got there first. She laughed. A small, light, theatrical laugh. The kind of laugh you put at the front of a sentence you've practiced, patted Mom's shoulder and said in a voice pitched exactly right for Marlene and Mrs. Pearson, and the aide called Rosalind to hear. "Don't worry, Mom, she's nobody important." The dining room held its breath. Marlene's hand stopped halfway to a coffee pot. Mrs. Pearson's mouth made an "Oh, Rosalind" looked down at her shoes. I did not stand up fast. I did not slap the table. I did not cry. I picked up my napkin and folded it once. I leaned forward and kissed the top of my mother's head. Her hair smelled like the cheap institutional shampoo and faintly underneath like the rosemary she had grown by her kitchen door for 30 years before she was moved here. The smell underneath was still hers. "Maya, sweetie," I said, "get the gift bag." Maya stood. Her chin was wobbling. She kept it up. On the way out, Marlene's fingertips brushed the cuff of my coat. Not a grab, a signal. I did not turn. In the car, I sat for a full minute before I started the engine. Maya buckled herself in. "Mom," her voice was very small. "Are we going home?" "We're going home, baby. But on Monday morning, I have somewhere to go first." I drove 47 minutes without the radio. Maya was asleep by 9. Mark was asleep by 10. He keeps construction hours and had a bid in the morning. The kitchen was the only room with a light on the under-cabinet halogen that turns everything in our house the color of weak honey. I sat down at the table with my phone, ILO legal pad, and the same pen I'd carried into court the day before. I scrolled to the top of the family group thread, the one Mom had started in 2019 before the diagnosis, when she still typed in full sentences with proper commas. And I scrolled forward 16 months. Then I went back to the beginning of those 16 months and started counting. I made columns the way I make columns when I'm checking a transcript against my own audio. Date, sender, phrase, pattern. By 2 in the morning, I had the pattern. 14 times in 16 months, Whitney had written some version of, "Mom is having a rough day. Please reschedule." 6 times she had written, "The front desk has new visitor protocols. I'll forward when I have them." She had never forwarded them. 3 times she had written about Helen. "Helen is too disruptive. Helen agitates Mom." The staff agreed. 23 emails when I cross-checked used 4 phrases over and over for Mom's well-being. The medical team feels I'm only doing this because you don't see what I see. I wrote those 4 phrases at the top of the legal pad and underlined them. In court, when a witness uses the same 4 phrases in 23 depositions, you don't call it grief, you call it script. I counted my visits next. 3. In 16 months, I had been admitted to the memory care wing 3 times. The other 45 Saturdays, something had come up. The aide had a cold. Mom had a fever. Mom had had a hard week. The wing was on a respiratory protocol. The respiratory protocol had only ever applied to my visits. I set the pen down. I was not crying. I was not angry. Exactly. I was the way I am at Manet, one of a long deposition. Settled square. Ready to listen for as long as it takes. I made one more column. What next? Under it, I wrote 3 names. Diane Beale, Helen Vry, Marlene Pace. I underlined Diane twice. It was 2:14 in the morning. I went to bed. Maya came into the kitchen at 7:40 in pajamas with cats on them. I had not been asleep so much as folded into the couch. "Mom," she said, "why does Aunt Whitney act weird around Grandma?" I'd been waiting 14 hours for that question. I'd been waiting 16 months. I patted the cushion next to me. She climbed up. "Maya, sometimes when people get older, the people around them can get possessive. The way you feel about Bear when Hannah comes over and wants to hold him. But I share Bear. I know you do. Mostly. Mostly is fine." She thought about it. She thought about it the way she thinks about a math problem with her chin tucked down. Some grown-ups, I said, forget how to share the people they love. They get it in their head that loving somebody means being the only one. It isn't true, but they believe it. Aunt Whitney believes it. I think she does. Are you going to make her share? I'm going to ask a judge to. Maya nodded once, the small, considering nod of a 10-year-old who has just been given a piece of grown-up information and decided to file it without asking follow-ups. She slid off the couch. In the kitchen, she poured cereal. I watched her from the doorway. She was very neat about it. She put the milk back. Mom, she said with her back to me, Saturdays, what about them? You wear the black blazer when we go up to see Grandma, the one with the small tear under the arm. And when Aunt Whitney calls and says we can't come, you take it off and hang it back up the same way every time. The hanger goes on the same hook. I leaned against the door frame. How long have you been noticing that? A while. She poured the milk. I have a notebook. What kind of notebook? Pink with unicorns. It used to be for stickers. She turned it around. Do you want to see it? Not yet, baby. Maybe in a couple of days, okay. She sat down with her cereal. She ate quietly. I went into the laundry room and stood with my forehead against the dryer for 1 full minute. My 10-year-old had been keeping a record I had not been keeping for myself. When I came back out, she had set my coffee on the table. The number came up unfamiliar at 11:12 on Sunday morning. I almost let it ring out. Tori, it's Helen VRY. I put the dish towel down. Sweetheart. Her voice was thin and careful, the way voices are when they've been rehearsing themselves all week. I've been trying to reach you for over a year. I changed phones. Whitney had me blocked, I think. The new numbers for emergencies, this counts. I sat down on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinets. I had not done that since I was pregnant. Helen, I'm here, I'm listening. 14 months ago, Whitney told me your mother didn't recognize me anymore, that my visits agitated her, that I was making the staff's job harder. I believed her. I shouldn't have. I'm 74 years old and I let your sister make me feel like I was the problem. It's all right. It is not. A small dry sound that might have been a laugh. Last month I ran into Marlene at the grocery store. She was buying lemons. She told me your mother still asks for me, she told me. Helen's breath caught. She told me your mother had been asking who you were. And I went home and I sat in my kitchen and I thought, I cannot be the kind offriend who lets that happen quietly. How many times did Whitney cancel you? 23 texts. I kept everyone, sweetheart, I keep everything. Helen, would you meet me at the bakery on Pine this afternoon? Bring the texts. I'll need them. Need them for what? I'm filing a petition. A long pause. Tori, I'm going to bring you those texts in a leather folder. The folder belonged to my husband. It's the most serious thing I own. We agreed on 400. She told me she had been afraid of Whitney for 14 months and that she felt foolish about it. I told her she was not foolish. I told her my sister scared most people who liked their lives quiet. When we hung up, I stayed on the kitchen floor for a while. Mark walked past, saw me, and did not ask. He set a glass of water on the counter without a sound and walked back out. When Helen hung up, I sat with the phone in my hand for a long time. If you've ever had someone in your family quietly cut you out of someone else's life and made you feel crazy for noticing, please leave one word in the comments. Seen. I read them all. And if you're new here, hit subscribe. There are 3 more pieces of evidence I haven't shown you yet, and one of them changed how I drove to court that Friday. Now, back to that Sunday afternoon in the bakery on Pine. Helen was already in the corner booth at 3:55. The bakery on Pine smelled like cardamom and butter and the kind of coffee they pour over slowly. The chime above the door was a small brass bell that had been there since I was Maya's age. Helen had on a navy cardigan and the leather folder she had promised. She slid the folder across the table. I opened it. 23 text messages printed, 3 hole punched with the dates highlighted in pale yellow. Helen had written a single line at the top of the first page in fountain pen ink for Tori in case it ever came to this. I drank my coffee. I read every message. Mom is having a hard day. Please don't come. The wing is on a respiratory protocol. I think your visits are making her worse. The staff agreed. I closed the folder. Helen, I'm going to need to copy these. I'll have them back to you by tomorrow. Keep them. I have the originals on my phone and a backup on a thumb drive in my safe deposit box. I told you I keep everything. You belong in court reporting. She laughed. A small, dry laugh. That was the first time I had heard her laugh in a year. I called Diane Beale's office from the parking lot and left a voicemail in my regulation court voice. Deanne, this is Tori Morgan, court reporter, Judge Harden's room. I need an emergency consultation tomorrow morning regarding a power of attorney modification. I have documented evidence. Please make space. Diane's paralegal called back within 40 minutes. 8:30 Monday morning. Bring everything. That night, after Maya was asleep, I went out to my car and reached into the glove compartment for my mother's old gardening glove. Underneath it, I found the folded envelope I'd been carrying around in the manila folder for 4 months. The note Mom had pressed into my hand in a lucid window in November. I still didn't open it. I put it in a fresh folder and labeled the folder Mom File in black Sharpie. I set my alarm for 5:30. I lay on my back next to Mark in the dark and listened to him breathe and thought. I have transcribed Diane Beale enough times to know 2 things. She does not waste words. She does not lose. I was awake at 5:13. I made coffee in the dark because the kitchen window faces east, and the kitchen window faces the kind of slow blue-gray dawn that makes you lower your voice without meaning to. I sat down at the table with a Mom File. I was rehearsing. Diane would want a clean narrative, date, source document. I laid the folder open and went through it like a brief, the Helen texts, the family group screenshots, the trust statements I'd been forwarded 6 months back, the legal pad with my 4-column tally, the clipped page where I had written in capitals, script, not grief. Underneath all of it was the small folded piece of paper my mother had pressed into my palm in November. I had carried it for 4 months. I unfolded it. The handwriting was my mother's, even shaky. She'd written it in pencil on a square torn from a memo pad, the kind of pad the facility kept by the sign-in sheet at the front desk. The lines ran a little downhill the way her writing did when she was tired, but the words were perfectly legible. It was 11 words. Tori, something is wrong here. Please, I don't know what. In the corner, she had written the date. November 15th. The very Saturday, Whitney had begun canceling me visits twice as often. I sat with it on the table in front of me for a long time. I was not crying. I want to find a better word for this, and there isn't one. Straightened. I had been bent for 16 months, and my mother in 11 words had straightened me. She had asked me in a lucid window in pencil in November. I had carried her question in my coat pocket for 4 months without reading it. I went to the office printer and made 3 copies. I scanned the original at 604. I wrote on the inside cover of Momful in pen. Mom asked me 16 months ago. I missed it for 4 months. I won't miss the next one. I folded the original back into quarters and slid it into the inside pocket of my black blazer. The one with the small tear under the arm, the one Maya had been counting. I left the house at 7. I drove 11 mph over the speed limit the whole way to Diane's office. I did not slow down. She had asked me in 11 words to do something. I was finally on time. Diane's waiting room had 2 armchairs, a low oak table with a tray of mints, and a fax machine from 2003 that still worked because Diane refused to let the firm replace it. I sat in the armchair on the right because it had the better light. I opened my laptop. I had 8 minutes before my appointment. I used them. I went into my email and pulled up the trust statement Whitney had forwarded to Mark and me 6 months ago, marked transparency for the family. At the time, I had skimmed it. I had been driving Maya to soccer. I had been telling myself my sister was overwhelmed. I read it now the way I read a court exhibit. 11 monthly withdrawals, all between $1,700 and $4,200, all with the same memo line. Vivan Home Maintenance, Property Tax, Sale Prep. My mother's house had been listed for sale prep for 18 months. It had never gone on the market. The lawn had been mowed twice. The shutters had not been painted. There were no contractors on the property record. I had driven by 3 times. I did the math on a fresh page of the legal pad. 11 withdrawals, just over $34,000. $3 weeks ago, Whitney had posted a photograph of her new kitchen on Facebook. White marble counters, a copper range hood. The caption had said, "Small renovation finally done after years." I closed the laptop. I do not say things in court reporter notes that I cannot back up. I do not say things to attorneys that I cannot back up. I would not say to Diane that my sister had taken $34,000 from my mother's trust to put copper hoods in her kitchen. I would say what I knew. I would let Diane say the rest. What I knew was a pattern of coincidences that in 14 years of court reporting, I had only ever seen called by one name. I closed the laptop. The waiting room clock said 8:22. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Whitney. I had not been called by my sister on a Monday morning in 3 years. I almost did not pick up to. "Hey." Her voice was at the lowest register I had heard it in 17 years. The voice that came out of her on the third day of our father's funeral when she had genuinely been wrecked. I've been thinking about Saturday all weekend. I felt awful. I think I was overwhelmed. Mom's been hard. The whole that thing I said, it came out wrong. "Can we have lunch this week?" I was sitting in Diane Bale's waiting room. The fax machine clicked at the front desk. "I'd like that," I said. "Today, tomorrow. Let me check my calendar tonight. How about Saturday?" A short pause. "Saturday is fine." "Saturday is great, Whitney." "Yeah, did you mean what you said?" A longer pause. The pause was the answer. The words were the cover. "I love you, sis. You know that, right? I love you." She had said "I love you" to me twice in 17 years. The first time had been when our father went into the ICU. The second time was now, 47 seconds before I walked into Diane Bale's conference room. "I'll text about Saturday. Okay, drive safe today." I had not told her I was driving anywhere. I hung up. I sat with my hands flat on the laptop and felt the small voice in my chest that had been raised on Sunday school theology. Family forgives. Family forgives. Family always forgives. Try to make itself loud. I reached into the inside pocket of my blazer and touched the folded note. "Tori, something is wrong here. Please, I don't know what." The voice quieted. In court, I had watched 100 witnesses get one phone call from the person they were about to testify against. They almost always took it. Half of them lost their nerve. The other half came in colder. I was the second kind. The paralegal opened the door. "Deanne's ready for you." I picked up mom file. Whitney had told me to drive safe. She had known I was driving without me telling her. Somewhere in the last hour, someone had told her where I was going. I would think about that later. Diane Beale was 52, gray at the temples, and built the way court reporters know lawyers, square at the shoulders, straight in the back, never wearing a single piece of clothing that called attention to itself. She wore navy. She always wore navy. She shook my hand once firmly and pointed at the chair across from her desk. "Foster versus Foster last spring," she said as she sat. "You caught my objection that the baif missed." "I did. Good catch. Tell me everything. Don't sequence it." "Just hand me what you've got." I opened mom file and slid it across the desk. 16-month message log. Helen Weiss 23 texts. Trust statement irregularities with the 11 withdrawals highlighted. My handwritten tally with the 4 phrases, the scanned copy of my mother's 11-word note. The handwriting I knew, shaky and downhill. Diane read for 14 minutes without speaking. She turned each page and laid it flat. She paused over the note. She paused twice. When she looked up, her face had not changed much, but the air in the room had. "You have 3 things judges in elder law cases want, and most family members never bring." She tapped the folder. A documented isolation pattern, an independent witness with contemporaneous records, and a written request from the principal made in a lucid window with a date that lines up with facility logs. My sister was named POA 3 years ago. Mom had capacity. Then you're not contesting that. You're alleging misuse of authority and harm to the principal with a request for emergency modification. That's a different statute. It's faster. It's also winnable. How fast? I file Wednesday morning, hearing Friday at the latest. Given the facility relocation pattern you've described and what we'll add about isolation. Judge Caldwell takes elder cases. He's careful. He's also impatient with charm. I need a witness from the facility. Marlene Pace, your floor RN. Can you reach her by tonight? Get her affidavit notarized before Wednesday. Bring me anything she has logged. Bring me your daughter's notebook if she'll part with it for the day. Your daughter, is a contemporaneous witness to attempted visits. She is 10, judges like 10, I nodded once. Diane closed the folder. Don't engage your sister between now and Friday. Don't take her calls. Don't apologize. Don't explain. We dathes on paper in court. She already called this morning. What did you say? Saturday lunch. Diane nodded slowly. Good. Saturday is after Friday. I signed the engagement letter on Diane's desk with the same pen I'd carried into the dining room at Maple Ridge. The retainer was $4,500, which was the savings mark, and I had been quietly accumulating for a week at the beach in August. I wrote the check without slowing down. Mark had told me at 6:00 the morning before to do whatever I had to do. He had said it without looking up from his coffee, which is how my husband says serious things. In the parking lot, I called Marlene Pace. She picked up on the second ring. The background noise was a kettle and a small dog. Torrey, I was hoping it would be you. Marlene, I'm filing for emergency POA modification Wednesday. A pause. I told myself, she said that the day someone asked me, I would say yes. I'm asking you. I'm saying yes. She had been keeping an internal incident log for 11 months, refusal of supplemental nutrition, canceled physical therapy, a list of 8 separate occasions when my mother had asked in front of staff where I was, and Whitney had answered for her. Marlene had logged the dates and the language. She had a binder. We agreed to meet Tuesday afternoon at 3:15 at a coffee shop 3M from Maple Ridge, not at the facility. Conflict of interest. She said she had thought about all of it. You've been waiting for this call. I have a mother in another state, Torrey. If somebody were doing this to her, I would want a Marlene. I drove home. On the way, I texted Whitney from a stoplight. Saturday lunch works for me. The Italian place by the courthouse. 12:30. I picked the courthouse on purpose. I would have an answer for her by then. I wanted her to read the location and not ask why. She wrote back immediately. Perfect. Looking forward, I put the phone face down on the passenger seat and drove the rest of the way home with the radio off. When I came in, Mark was in the kitchen frying. Maya was at the table with her pink notebook open drawing. How'd it go? It went, need anything? Drive Maya to soccer this week. I'm going to be late at work. He slid a plate in front of me without a word. The point of no return is a quiet event when you let it be one. Marlene came in at 3:14 on Tuesday. The coffee shop was the kind of place where the espresso machine hisses every 20 seconds and nobody listens to anybody. She was carrying a red binder under her right arm. The binder was scuffed at the corners. It looked like it had been held a great deal. She set it on the table and turned it to face me. I started the log 11 months ago, she said. Not because I suspected anything, because the wing requires us to. I'm a nurse. I write things down. Marlene, you knew. I suspected. There's a difference. I logged. I didn't act. That was for someone else to do. I'm sorry it took you 16 months to come back. It took my mother 11 words. She looked at me. She did not say anything for a second. She opened the binder. Page after page in her small square nurse's handwriting. Dates, times, initials, phrases. November 2nd. Daughter W refused. Insure supplement. Stated patient had eaten enough at lunch. Patient weight 132 lb, down 4 lb from October 15th. December 18th. Daughter W canceled scheduled PT session. No reason recorded. Patient asked when sister was coming. Daughter W responded. Torrey is busy. January 22nd. Patient asked for Helen. Daughter W responded. Helen moved away. Mom, February 4th. Patient asked for daughter Torrey. Daughter W present. Daughter W said, Torrey is busy, Mom. Patient began to cry. Daughter W reassured patient. I stopped reading at February 4th. That had been the morning after I had texted Whitney begging to come up for the weekend. Whitney had written back, Mom's having a hard day. Please reschedule. That had been the day my mother had cried for me by name. I closed the binder. Marlene, I need you to sign an affidavit. My attorney needs the original log. We'll return it. We can have it notarized this afternoon. She slid a folder across the table, already typed, already signed in front of a notary that morning. I had it ready, she said. I told you. The day someone asked, I was saying yes. I put my hand flat on top of the binder for a second. I did not say anything. The espresso machine hissed. She covered my hand with hers briefly and then stood up. Tuesday at 3:15, she said. Same time the day after the hearing. Come tell me how it went. I will. Whitney's car pulled into our driveway at 8:47 Tuesday evening. She had not been to my house in 2 years. She did not get out at first. She sat in the car with her hands on the wheel for 40 seconds. I watched her through the kitchen window. Maya was upstairs with the bath running. Mark was at the bid. Whitney got out. She walked to the porch. She did not knock. I opened the door. She didn't come in. She stood on the second step. The porch light was on. The magnolia by the rail was in tight bud 3 weeks from open. She had on lipstick the color of a bruise. I know you called Diane Beale today. I did not ask how. The courthouse complex is a small town. Whitney was a real estate agent. Real estate agents and divorce lawyers and elder law attorneys all drank at the same 2 restaurants. Whitney, why are you here? She took a breath. The mask she wore for the church in the neighborhood came off in pieces the way some clothes come off. Slowly, then all at once. If you file anything, she said anything, I will tell Mom every single visit that you abandoned her, that you didn't want her. I'll tell her every Tuesday and every Saturday for as long as she has left. And you know what dementia does to she won't remember the words. She'll remember the feeling. That'll be the last thing she has of you, the feeling that you left. She had practiced it. I could hear the cadence. I held the door frame. Whitney, get off my porch. She stayed where she was for 1 more second. Then she turned at her car door. She stopped and looked back over her shoulder. You think you're better than me? You weren't there. I was there. I was Theane who showed up. She got in the car. She backed out of the driveway slowly, the way you do when you want to be sure to be seen leaving. I stood in the open doorway for 14 minutes. I did not call Diane. I did not call Mark. I went inside, climbed the stairs, opened the bathroom door 6 in, watched Maya splash plastic dolphins for a moment, and then went back to the kitchen and wrote down everything Whitney had just said, word for word, cadence for cadence. In court, a person who threatens out loud has already done it in her head. I would let Diane decide what to do with that. I heard Maya come down the stairs at 9:24. The bath was over. Her hair was wet and braided crookedly against her shoulder. She was carrying a pink notebook with unicorn stickers on the front. She came out onto the porch and sat next to me on the wicker bench. I heard Aunt Whitney, she said. How much? Most of it, Maya. It's okay, Mom. She opened the notebook. The first page had a date, August 12th, 16 months ago, and a small drawing of a hanger. Next to the hanger, she had drawn a black blazer, and next to the blazer, she had put a small star. I turned the page. Saturday after Saturday, hanger, blazer, star, 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 star. On 3 pages, she had drawn a smiling face. Those were the Saturdays we'd actually made it in. I counted the stars. There were 39. Maya, when did you start this? After the 3rd time, Aunt Whitney said, you didn't visit enough on the family thing and you cried in the laundry room. I thought somebody should write it down. I have transcribed 3,000 families. I had not noticed that my 10-year-old had been writing one of them. I put my arm around her. Mom, do you want me to write a letter to the judge? No, baby. Why not? Because you already wrote the notebook. You wrote it before anyone asked you to. That counts for more than a letter. She leaned her head against my shoulder. Her hair smelled like strawberry shampoo and the chlorine of bath bubbles. Mom, yeah. Aunt Whitney sounded scared. I looked at the magnolia. She is scared, baby. That doesn't mean she gets to do what she's doing. People do bad things when they're scared sometimes. You still don't let them. She nodded against my shoulder. We sat on the porch for a long time without talking. The cicadas were not out yet. It was still March. The crickets were. The magnolia bud was tight and creamy and smelled very faintly of pepper. Inside the kitchen, the dishwasher cycled into rinse with a small domestic huff. May fell asleep against my arm at 12 minutes to 10. I carried her up. I did not put the blazer back on the same hook that night. I hung it by the door on a different one. Friday, I would wear it. That night, I sat on the porch with Maya's notebook in my lap and realized my daughter had been documenting what I was too tired to document. If anyone in your life has ever silently kept count for you when you couldn't, drop a heart in the comments for them. And if you want to stay for what happened in court Friday morning, hit subscribe. The video is half over. The hard half hasn't started yet. Now, back to Wednesday morning. Diane filed the emergency petition at 9:06 on Wednesday morning. Her assistant called me from the clerk's window when the file stamp went on. I was in Judge Harden's room transcribing a small claims case about a fence. I read the message in my lap and did not change my face. By 11, the petition had been rooted. By 2, it had a hearing date. Friday at 9, Judge Caldwell. Whitney was served at 4:30 Wednesday afternoon. The process server was a man named Curtis I'd transcribed 3 times. He served Whitney at her real estate office in front of her 2 showing assistants and the receptionist. He told me later professionally that her face had gone the color of chalk and then come back. She had asked Curtis if he was kidding. Curtis had said, "Ma'am, no, she did not call me Wednesday night." She did not call me Thursday morning. By Thursday at noon, she had hired Robert Kessler. Kessler was a divorce attorney out of the bigger town 2 counties south. He had the kind of voice that worked on juries. Diane heard about it within 20 minutes. The courthouse complex is a small town, and her only comment to me by text was, "He doesn't know elder law evidentiary standard. We're fine." Thursday afternoon, Diane and I went through the exhibit binder one last time. Tab A, 16 months of family group screenshots color-coded by the 4 scripted phrases. Tab B, Maya's pink notebook with the 39 stars itemized in a typed key. Tab C, Helen Virai's 23 texts. Tab D, Marlene Pack's 11-month log and notarized affidavit. Tab E, the trust irregularity report. Tab F, the handwriting analysis of my mother's note, completed by an examiner Diane had used in 2 prior cases. Tab G, the original 11 words. Diane closed the binder at 4:40. "This is ready," she said. "You go home, eat dinner. Don't read this folder again tonight, I won't. You'll want to, I won't. Mark made spaghetti, Maya cut her own noodles." After dinner, Mia brought the pink notebook downstairs and laid it on the kitchen counter, gentle as a held bird, and said, "Take care of it for me, Mom." I told her I would. I cleaned the kitchen. I set the dishwasher. I was reaching to turn out the under-cabinet light when my phone rang. It was 9:31 at night. It was Marlene. I pressed the green button. "Marlene, Tora, you need to know something. Tonight, I'm sorry it's late. Tell me." This afternoon, a transfer coordinator Camito the wing from a place called Cedar Hollow Care. It's in the western part of the state, almost 2 hours from here. I sat down at the kitchen table. Whitney came with her. They sat with the wing director for 40 minutes. I was on shift. I overheard most of it. "Whitney signed pre-mission paperwork for your mother. The intake date is Monday. Marlene, Cedar Hollow doesn't have a memory care specialty. It has a general elder wing. It's understaffed. I looked them up. They had a citation in October. Tori, I'm telling you, your mother on this floor is having a good week. Your mother at Cedar Hollow stops eating in 9 days. The under-cabinet halogen made everything in the kitchen the color of weak honey. I noticed it the way you notice a courtroom on a long day by the small, permanent things. Why, my guess, Marlene's voice was steady. She wants distance. She wants you on a 4-hour round trip. She wants Helen too far to come. She wants me out of the picture. She probably wants the house sold while no one's watching. Can you get me a copy of the paperwork? I already photographed it. I'll send it to your attorney's office tonight. I copied your number, too. Marlene, what? Thank you. Be on time tomorrow." I hung up. I called Diane on her cell. She answered on the first ring. "Marlene Pace just sent something to your office line. I'm seeing it." A pause. The sound of a printer. Cedar Hollow Care. Whitney's signature. Monday moving date 3 days after the hearing. What does it mean? It means we ask for an injunction tomorrow morning in addition to modification. It means I add an exhibit by 700 a.m. It means Robert Kessler is going to find out about this paperwork in the courtroom. He doesn't know about it. Tora, your sister doesn't tell her own attorney everything. They never do. Get some sleep. I did not get any sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with the water still running into a pan in the sink. I had forgotten to turn it off. I sat there until the pan overflowed. Whitney was not just keeping me out. She was about to make out 2 hours wider. I did not feel afraid. I felt on time. Judge Caldwell's room was on the 3rd floor at the end of the south corridor. Oak benches, fluorescent panels with one always slightly out of phase, a water pitcher with a thin film at the bottom that the bafe refilled before every session. I sat behind Diane in the 2nd row on the right. Whitney sat behind Robert Kessler on the left. She wore navy. She had spent 30 seconds longer on her hair than usual. I could tell because her temple was smooth in a way it hadn't been at the birthday lunch. Kessler was in a sand-colored suit. He looked confident. He looked like a man who had not opened the binder he had been given. Hannah, the court reporter, gave me a small nod from her chair. She had been a reporter for as long as I had. She knew me. I gave her a small nod back. Judge Caldwell came in at 3 minutes after 9. Counsel, Diane, stood. She gave her opening in 11 minutes. She did not raise her voice. She did not say the word betrayal once. She presented a documented isolation pattern, an independent witness, and a written statement from the principal made in a verified lucid window. She referenced tabs A through G. She referenced the 11 words. Kessler stood. Your Honor, the petitioner is a sibling acting out of grief and resentment. The respondent has been the dedicated primary caregiver for 3 years. There is no evidence of abuse or neglect. There is a family disagreement. Family disagreements are not the business of this court. He sat. Diane did not interrupt. She waited until Caldwell looked at her. Your Honor, may I present Exhibit S? She placed a single sheet on the bench. Behind it, she placed a folder. Exhibit S is the original handwritten note placed in the petitioner's hand by the principal, Vivian Morgan, on November 15th of last year. Behind it is the contemporaneous facility log entry from Maple Ridge Memory Care identifying a verified lucid window from 1:15 to 2:40 that afternoon. Behind that is a forensic handwriting analysis. She paused. With the court's permission, I'd like to read the note into the record. Caldwell looked at it. He read it himself first. He set it down carefully. You may. Diane read the 11 words slowly. Tori, something is wrong here. Please, I don't know what. The room held still for a count of 4. I had transcribed objections in that room for years. I had never heard it go that quiet. Mrs. Pearson's daughter, who had come on her own after Marlene had told her the hearing was open, covered her mouth with her hand. Whitney's chin came up, her head turned half an inch toward Kessler. He did not look at her. Caldwell said, Continue, Ms. Beale. Diane laid down Marlene's binder. 11 months of contemporaneous nursing notes from the floor RN, notarized affidavit attached. Let me draw the court's attention to entries on November 2nd, December 18th, January 22nd, and February 4th. The principal on February 4th asked for the petitioner by name. The respondent told her the petitioner was busy. The petitioner had texted their respondent that morning asking to come. The respondent had told her the principal was having a hard day. Caldwell's eyes moved to Whitney. Diane laid down Helen V. Rye's leather folder. 23 text messages from the respondent canceling visits by the principal's longtime friend over 14 months. The friend is in this courtroom and prepared to testify if needed. Helen in the back row lifted her hand once. Caldwell did not need her to continue. Diane laid the trust statement next. 11 monthly withdrawals labeled as home maintenance for a property that has been listed as sale prep for 18 months and never marketed. Total $34,200 withdrawn during the same window as a substantial private renovation at the respondent's residence photographed and posted publicly 3 weeks ago. Kessler stood. Your Honor, that's speculative. It's a numbered list, Mr. Kessler. Diane said I drew no conclusions. I provided the numbers and the timing. The court can decide whether the timing speculates. Caldwell did not smile. The lower half of his face moved in the way a face moves when it is choosing not to. Sustained as to characterization. The numbers are admitted. Diane picked up the last folder. Your Honor, I have one final exhibit. Exhibit T filed this morning at 7:14. She placed it on the bench. Premission paperwork at a facility called Cedar Hollow Care in the western part of the state signed by the respondent in her capacity as power of attorney 3 days ago. Move-in date for the principal Monday. The room shifted not dramatically. The way a room shifts when an HVAC system you didn't notice cuts off. Cedar Hollow does not have a memory care specialty. It is 1 hour and 47 minutes from the principal's current facility, her established care team, and her independent visitor witnesses. It is 1 hour and 47 minutes from the petitioner. It is 2 hours and 10 minutes from the principal's longtime friend. Diane looked at Kessler when she said the next part just for half a second. It does not appear the respondent's counsel was made aware of this transfer. It also does not appear the principal was. Whitney leaned forward in her seat fast. Kessler Unk's mouth opened. He looked at the page in front of him. He looked at his client. Your Honor, he said slowly. May I have a brief recess to confer with my client? Denied. Miss Beale. Yes, Your Honor. Are you also requesting injunctive relief on the relocation? We are. Caldwell turned to the respondent's table. Miss Morgan. Whitney straightened. Yes, Your Honor. Can you explain why this paperwork was filed 2 days after you were served with notice of this hearing and 3 days before the move-in date you intended to execute? Whitney opened her mouth. She closed it. She opened it again. I was exploring options for my mother's continued care. You were exploring options. 2 days after being served with a Monday move-in. Yes, Your Honor. Did you discuss this exploration with your sister? My sister and I have not been on speaking terms. You phoned her Monday morning. The petitioner has the call log. I did in fact have the call log. I had pulled it Monday afternoon. It was tab H. Diane had not used it until now. Whitney did not answer. Did you discuss this exploration with the principal's primary nursing staff? They would not have understood the financial considerations. Did you discuss it with your own attorney? Whitney looked at Kessler. Kessler did not look at her. Mr. Kessler, Caldwell said quietly. Did your client discuss this exploration with you? She did not, Your Honor. Caldwell turned back to Whitney. He did not raise his voice. Ms. Morgan, sit down. She sat. Mrs. Pearson's daughter took her hand off her mouth. Helen, 2 rows behind me, let out a small, audible breath. Caldwell looked at the 11 words on the bench in front of him for a long moment. I'll take a 15-minute recess. I will return with a ruling. Caldwell came back at 11:42. He did not sit. He stood at the bench with his hand flat on the binder Diane had built and read the ruling in the same flat voice he used for everything. Emergency power of attorney modification granted. Whitney Morgan removed as agent for Vivian Morgan. Effective immediately. Tori Morgan appointed temporary power of attorney pending full hearing in 30 days. Visitation by the former agent restricted to supervised visits. Maximum 1 hour per week at the principal's current facility with documentation. Injunctive relief on the proposed relocation granted. The Cedar Hollow Care Premission paperwork void. He set the binder down. Ms. Morgan. Whitney stood. You were named to this position by your mother because she trusted you. She trusted you while she still had the capacity to know what trust was. The record before this court suggests you used that trust to isolate your mother from people who loved her, to delay scrutiny of your stewardship of her trust, and to arrange a transfer that this court finds was not in her best interest. You were entitled to a defense. Your defense was not in this court's view persuasive. He paused. This is an emergency modification. It is not a finding of fraud. The full hearing in 30 days will examine financial restitution. Until then, you will not enter the principal's wing without supervision. You will not contact the principal by phone or letter without supervision. You will not contact the petitioner outside of supervised settings. Are you clear? Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Kessler. Your Honor, you'll want to make sure your client understands this order in writing before you leave the courthouse today. Yes, Your Honor. Caldwell looked one more time at the 11 words on his bench. Courties adjourned. He left. The bailiff stood. The room exhaled. Whitney did not look at me. She did not look at Kessler either. She picked up her purse with both hands like it was full of something fragile and walked out the side door in the hallway. She stopped just for a second. She turned. She looked at me. She did not say anything. I did not say anything either. She walked. I sat back down on the bench. I did not stand up for almost 2 minutes. Diane sat down next to me. "You did the work," she said. "The note did the rest." I nodded. I could not speak yet. Hannah, packing up her stenotype across the room, caught my eye and held it for a count of 3. Court reporter nod. Court reporter understanding. I nodded back. In the parking lot, I called Mark. "It's done." "Are you okay, Mark? I get to drive up tomorrow." He didn't say anything for a beat. "Then I'll have Maya ready." "Mark." "Yeah." "I need you to do one thing. Anything. Take the blazer to the cleaners. The small tear under the arm, have them mend it. I want to wear it Tuesday." "Okay." I drove home. I did not cry until the second stoplight on Route 11. I cried for 60 seconds exactly, the length of one cycle of the light. And then I stopped because the light had gone green and the people behind me had places to be. Saturday morning, I drove to Maple Ridge for the first time in 14 weeks without an appointment cancellation in my inbox. Maya rode shotgun with the pink notebook in her lap. The pages were blank again. Diane had mailed it back from her office in a manila envelope with a handwritten note that said, "Counselor, return to original owner. Service rendered." I had a copy of the new visitor protocol on the passenger floor. The wing had reset its keypad code at 7 that morning. Marlene had texted me the new code. She had also texted me. Vivan had cream of wheat with extra sugar at breakfast. She ate all of it. I parked at 911. The aide at the front desk, Rosalind, looked up and her face moved very fast through 3 different expressions before she landed on a small, careful smile. "Torre," she said. "Welcome back." The keypad worked on the first try. Mom was in the common room by the upright piano. The piano had been donated by a family whose mother had passed 3 years ago and nobody played it. But Mom had spent 20 minutes a week sitting on the bench with her hands flat on the closed lid. That was where she was now. Hands on the lid, eyes on the window. The morning light at 9:15 came through that window at an angle that made everything in the room, the piano, Thurug, my mother's hair, look the color of clean honey. I sat down on the bench next to her. I did not say her name first. I just took her hand. She let me. She did not look at me. She was somewhere quieter than the room. Then, after maybe 4 seconds, longer than the last time, she turned her hand and held mine back. "Mom," I said. "It's me." She did not say my name. She did not have to. Maya climbed onto the bench on Mom's other side and opened the notebook to a new page. She had drawn a picture of the tomato vines from Mom's old garden with a small, smiling face peeking out of one of them. She held it up where Mom could see. "Grandma, I drew you a tomato." Mom looked. Mom looked at it for a long time. A small sound came out of her, not a word, the precursor of a word. And Maya, who was 10 and brilliant, did not press her. She just turned the page slowly. Marlene came in at 10 with a paper cup of vanilla Ensure. She set it on the small table by the piano. My mother, without prompting, without help, picked it up and drank it. Marlene caught my eye. She nodded once. Helen arrived at 11:00. Mom looked up at the sound of her voice. Helen sat down on the rug at her feet and began to talk about the weather and the magnolia at my house and the lemons at the grocery store. I did not say anything for 22 minutes. I just sat. The full hearing came 30 days later. Whitney did not contest the permanent modification. Her attorney had advised her not to. The evidence had already done the work. The order became permanent with a small additional clause requiring Whitney to repay the trust the $34,000 and change she had spent on her renovation. She did. She sold a car to do it. 3 years, Tuesdays and Saturdays, 47 minutes up, 47 minutes back, 312 visits. Helen came every Tuesday until the month before she died. 4 months after Mom did. Helen left me a strand of pearls in her will. She left another to Maya. She left her leather folder, the one her husband had carried, to the elder law clinic Diane volunteered with on Saturdays. Whitney's supervised visits ran 6 in the first year, 2 in the second, and none in the third. She did not write Mom letters. She wrote me one around the 18-month mark on a piece of cream stationery I recognized from our childhood. The letter said 3 things in 3 short paragraphs. She was sorry. She did not expect forgiveness, and she had moved out of the church we had grown up in. The stamp was a forever stamp with a goldfinch on it. I put the letter in Mom file without answering. Some letters do not need to be answered. I did not throw it away. Mom's house sold under court-supervised arrangement at month 14. The proceeds went into the trust I administered. None of it went to renovations. It went to private aids on Mondays and Thursdays, so Mom never went a weekday without someone reading to her. It went to a stipend for Marlene's continuing education courses. It went to lemon tree saplings I planted along the path outside Mom's wing, because lemons had been the last thing Helen had been buying when she ran into Marlene at the grocery store. Maya was 13 the year Mom died. She still brought the pink notebook. The pages had filled and refilled. Mom did not remember the contents from one Saturday to the next, but she always recognized Maya's voice. That is the small grace dementia leaves. Mom died on a Tuesday morning in April at 6:14. I had been there since 5:30. Marlene had called me at 4:40. She did not say my name. She squeezed my hand twice, slowly, deliberately twice, and then her fingers loosened. The last thing I said to her was, "I'm here, Mom. I'm Torrey. I'm right here." She did not answer with a word. She did not need to. I am back in Judge Hardin's room as I write this. It's a Friday afternoon. A different family, a different table. I have my stenotype in front of me and the small wooden drawer underneath where I keep 2 pens, a roll of mints, and 1 folded square of paper I have carried for almost 5 years. 11 words. My mother's handwriting. Pencil. November 15th. I keep it there because some days the courtroom fills with people doing to each other what my sister did to my mother. And on those days, I touch the drawer once and remember what 11 words can do. My mother forgot my name 3 years before she died. She did not remember it again. She knew the shape of my hand. She knew Helen's voice. She knew Maya's drawings. She remembered in her fingers the second measure of Claire de Lune, a piece she had taught me when I was 7, sitting on the bench beside her with my feet not quite reaching the pedals. I want to leave you with Thella's Tuesday I am ready to write about. It was 3 weeks before she died. Spring had come early to the wing. The light at 4:00 was the slow gold particular to that window. I was sitting next to her on the piano bench. Her hands were on the closed lid as usual. She began very softly to hum. It took me half a measure to recognize it. She got to the second measure. She got to the third. Her eyes were closed. Her breathing was even. I let her have the room. That is the end of my mother's story. That is the beginning of how I tell mine. If you have made it here, thank you for sitting with me. In the comments, tell me one of 2 things. Saw it if you saw a Whitney coming and stopped her. Or saw you if you ever needed a Tory and one finally showed up. I read every word. For more stories about families, boundaries, and the quiet courage of paperwork. The playlist is linked in the description. Tuesday and Saturday, friend. Tuesday and